We turn now to number 11 in our series on the Gospel of Mark. This one's entitled Taken and Tried, and it's focusing primarily on Mark chapter 14. This is the arrest and the trial of Jesus. So let's take a look at Mark 14 and see what it's actually saying. It's 2 days before Passover. The chief priests and the religious leaders are trying to find some surreptitious way, some rather underhand way to arrest Jesus and have him killed. But they don't want to do it during Passover because they're afraid that the people will riot because they already appreciate Jesus. We have the story of the woman who comes with the alabaster jar of nard perfume that she anoints Jesus with. Some of those there, as Mark says, why waste this perfume? In the other Gospels, we understand that this was Judas, the treasurer, who really was objecting. And Jesus says, leave her alone. Why are you criticizing her for doing something beautiful for me? You always have the poor with you, and you can help them whenever you want, but you won't always have me with you. She did what she could. She anointed my body in anticipation of my burial. Jesus knows what is coming. His arrest, his being taken and tried, isn't a shock or a surprise to him because he already is aware of what they're planning and what is going to happen. That's when Judas Iscariot, goes away to betray Jesus to the chief priests. I wonder whether it was because of this rebuke of what he was saying and his understanding that, no, Jesus, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. You have all this power. Why don't you use it? Why don't you make sure that everybody knows that you are the Messiah? You are divine even, something like that. What was going through his mind? We don't know, but we can speculate. And then you have the story of the Passover meal that then we've transferred into what we call the communion service. Jesus tells them very bluntly, those disciples, that one of you sharing this food with me is going to betray me, and how terrible it will be for that particular person. Then they go off to the to the Mount of Olives, and that's where the betrayal happens, right after Jesus's agonizing battle, I would want to call it that, in Gethsemane. He's dealing with the devil, who is trying to convince him, I believe, that he shouldn't go through with it, that this isn't worth doing. Why would you bother? These people, they don't want even to know you, and even your disciples, your best friends, they're fast asleep. They're not even aware of what is happening. And then when he comes back, that's when Judas arrives with a mob carrying swords and clubs sent by the chief priests, religious leaders and elders. And of course, then we have it recorded that Judas betrays Jesus with a kiss. And that's very symbolic, very, what could you say? A great denial of what a kiss should be. It's not a sign of love, it was a sign of hate and betrayal. Jesus asked, why have you come to arrest me with all these swords and clubs? Am I some kind of rebel? Pointing out that he's never, ever resorted to violence. Of course, as he's arrested, all the disciples run away. Interesting little side part there in the narrative from Mark. One of his followers was a young man who was wearing only a linen garment. They seized hold of him, but he ran off naked, leaving the garment behind. No other gospel writer records that. It's only Mark, and so some have speculated that this was Mark, and that this is his involvement in the whole narrative. They take Jesus to the high priest's house, and Peter is there. And they're all trying to find some way of accusing Jesus, but they can't really find anything on which people will agree. And so eventually the chief priest, the high priest, says, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" And Jesus says, I am. And you will see the Son of Man sitting on the right of the Mighty One and coming with the clouds of heaven. And that for them is the absolute proof. That is blasphemy. He's condemned to death and he's led away. Well, you remember what's happening with Peter. He is denying that he even knew him. A tragic kind of response. But there's a big difference between the way in which Judas responds and Peter responds. Maybe that's the thought to leave you with as you think about these important things this particular week.